Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we're gonna go straight into it. And today we're gonna be making a 16-ounce globe. I wouldn't necessarily call this a blood drip because it's not red, but I wanted to mimic like a blood drip. So this was what I came up with. I used alcohol inks to get the color, and it's in the color fuchsia. When I was filming this, I actually realized that I was out of glycerin. So I ended up using this Elmer's Magic liquid that I believe is for slime, but I winged it. And once I added the alcohol ink to the magic liquid, it gave me a jello-like consistency. And I panicked, but I continued to keep mixing and mixing. And then I added a little bit of water just to break up the jello-like consistency, and it worked out perfectly fine. Now, I would not recommend using magic liquid if you're not gonna add any water to it, because like I said, I was going for a blood drip, but not really a blood drip, more like to mimic a blood drip. But that's what I came up with, and I actually really liked how it turned out. So you want to just keep mixing and mixing until you get the consistency that you like. If you need to add more water, add more water. But like I said, I would prefer to do this with glycerin instead of Elmer's Magic liquid. To add the liquid, I used a syringe. I bought these in a pack off Amazon. I will go ahead and try to find it and link it in the description box. To seal this, I just used a small piece of double-sided adhesive, and I added a little bit of UV resin, and then I cured it with my UV light for about 2 to 3 minutes. Once that is sealed, you want to make sure that it's sealed perfectly just so you don't get anything leaking out. And then you want to prep your globe just to get any oils and dust or debris, anything that's on there. But since we're going to be using a UV DTF wrap, do not use alcohol to clean it, because alcohol and these UV DTF wraps are in a fight. They do not go well together. So you want to make sure you just clean it really well with like a paper towel or something. So when you're applying a UV DTF wrap, you want to be very patient and work very, very slowly, because you can crack these, lift these, and once you apply these, you cannot remove these. I mean, you can, but you will damage the glass globe, and it just will be sticky and it just won't be pretty. So when using these, you just want to be very, very patient and be very careful when you are applying these. When applying these wraps, you either want to start from the middle or use the hinge method and just work your way out, removing the backing and squeegeeing out any air bubbles. So for the lid, I wanted to try something new and different. Instead of rhinestoning the entire lid, I wanted to go ahead and add UV resin to the lid and add just like a couple of rhinestones on the straw hole and then on the outer part of the lid. So I like to paint these before I add anything to them, meaning like the rhinestones. I always use a white chalk base paint just to get like the color more opaque, because if you go in straight with the color, depending on whatever you're using to paint these, it won't be as opaque. So I always like to use a white base chalk paint. I usually always do 2 layers of the chalk white paint. And to speed up the drying process, I go ahead and take my heat gun just to dry it a bit quicker, and then I go in again with a second layer. And then once the second layer is done, again I hit it with my heat gun, and then I start applying my color paint. Also, don't forget to do the edge of the lid. I use a smaller brush when I'm doing these lids. I used to use a bigger brush, but I would get paint like in the straw hole and then on the bottom of the lid from like the inside part, and I didn't really like how that looked, because to clean that up, it's kind of tedious and a little bit hard. So when painting these, you just want to use a smaller brush and be very patient and just go very slow when you're painting these. So for the color, we're going to be using black, and I forgot I even had this specific black paint. I have other acrylic paints, but they're not as opaque as this one, and a little bit of this one goes a long way. I think you could even get away with just doing one layer and you would get really good coverage, and it dries really quick too. I think it's the same brand as the white chalk paint I use. I would have to double check that, but like I said, a little bit of this paint goes a long way. You'll see here that I actually take some off the lid because I added too much and I was already getting really good coverage. So if you have an opaque paint like this one, you could probably just get away with one layer. So like I said, for the lid, I wanted to try something different. So we're going to be adding glitter to UV resin and applying that to the lid instead of adding a layer of rhinestones. So for this step, you want to take your glitter. You don't have to add glitter, but I like to add glitter to everything. Makes it prettier. But you could just go ahead and leave the lid as it is and just use like a additive such as like Twilight, because I absolutely love Twilight. Epoxy additive, the movie too, but that's not the case right now. You want to add a little bit of UV resin, not too much glitter and not too little glitter, if that makes any sense. Just because you don't want the UV resin to be super thick, because it can mess with the way it cures. So mix it very well, and when you apply this to the lid, let it spread on its own. If it's runny enough, it will move on its own, and then you could just help it with your stir stick. And once you get the coverage that you need for the entire lid, you could go ahead and cure this for about 2 to 3 minutes with your UV light, or you could even set this outside under the sun. And depending on what brand you use for resin is the time you're gonna leave it outside. Once the layer with glitter and UV resin is cured, you want to add a thinner layer of UV resin, just because you can or you will feel the glitter depending on how much you added. For this lid, I actually did feel a little bit of glitter and I could still see it, and I don't like how it looks, meaning it looked a little bit rough and not as smooth. So to get it smooth, go ahead and add a thin layer of UV resin and just spread it very carefully around the straw hole. And once that is cured under your light or the sun, you want to make your way to the edge where I will show you how the UV resin is added on that side of the lid. So for the outer edge of the lid, we're going to be applying a small amount of UV resin, pretty much like you're painting it. So you want to pour it into a medicine cup just so you're able to see how much you have in there. And you want to start by painting it almost like you're painting paint, but you just have to be very careful not to get it on the top of the lid, because since that's already done, it might mess it up once you cure it. And if you actually do happen to get it on the top, just go ahead and wipe it off. Very good. Do not use alcohol, because for some reason alcohol makes it sticky. At least in my experience, it has made it sticky when not cured. So just apply it very carefully and make sure none gets on the top of the lid. And the reason why we're doing this is because we are going to be applying rhinestones to the outer edge. But since the paint isn't fully glossy, you want to make sure it matches the top of the lid. And then once you're done, go ahead and cure this all around for 2 to 3 minutes. Make sure you get all sides of the lid just to make sure that everything is cured properly. Once that's fully cured, you want to start adding a thin layer of whatever glue you use for rhinestones. I'm using Liquid Fusion, and I just start by adding a very thin line around the edge of the lid, and then I apply my rhinestones with this wax pen tool. And then once that's done, I go ahead and also add rhinestones around the straw hole. So that is it for this video, you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you stayed till the end, please comment down below with black and pink hearts, and turn on the notification bell just so you're notified of whenever I do post a new video. Thank you guys.